Hello, welcome to Salgado University and the Salgado School of Social Studies. This is Lesson 2.2. Thanks for tuning in. Hello everyone, we're back. I'm wearing the same thing only because I recorded the last video just 2 minutes ago, so there's no need for me to change. But again, before we begin, please make sure you take out a pen or pencil, your notes either in loose leaf form or you printed them out, your glossary, and if you need it, some headphones. Let's begin. So the agenda, as always, we're going to do first. We're going to do a lesson objective, review some old stuff, new stuff, and of course, the exit ticket. Let's go ahead and take 5 minutes to complete the do first. All you're going to tell me who the winner was, either Texas or Mexico, between these 4 battles. Please take 5 minutes to pause now. Great. Let's go ahead and go over our answers. So for number 1, the Battle of Gonzales, which happened on October 2nd, 1835. Who do you think won the battle? Texas did, remember? Come and take it. Only 1 Mexican soldier died, but it was still a victory for the Texans. Number 2, the Battle of the Alamo, March 6th, 1836. Who do you think won? Mexico. They had thousands of troops, and they just pretty much killed everyone at the Alamo, and that's why everyone keeps saying, remember the Alamo, whenever they're fighting. The Massacre of Goliad, which happened on March 27th, 1836. Who do you think won that? Mexico. And lastly, April 21st, 1836, the Battle of San Jacinto, the Texans. If you did not watch the last video, please make sure you watch that last video, because if you got that one wrong, I don't know what else to tell you. Some announcements. Again, it was great to see y'all the other day during the family gathering. For those of y'all who reached out for office hours, thank you guys for calling me, for, letting me into your lives and, just catching up. The challenge still going on. Send me your loads from both lessons 2.1 and 2.2 for a chance to win pizza delivery at your house. Kevin Colon is our first winner, as I said in the last video, so congratulations, Kevin. Let's move on. So, our lesson for today. The Texas Revolution. The Treaties of Velasco. Objective. Students will be able to describe the provisions of the Treaties of Velasco, and students will be able to describe how both sides felt about the Treaty of Velasco. So, some vocabulary words, only one vocabulary word, really. So, treaty means an agreement between countries, either an agreement to end war or to just an agreement to do something in between countries. Alright, so some new stuff. We're not going to do any old stuff. The old stuff is all ready to do first, so you're all good. The new stuff. The Treaties of Velasco, 2 treaties, and feelings between the Texans and Mexicans about the Treaties of Velasco. So, the end of the Battle of San Jacinto. If you remember from last video, San Jacinto was the last battle of the Texas Revolution, and President General Santa Anna was captured. Sam Houston, the general of the Texas Army, he made an agreement with Santa Anna in exchange for his life. Many Texan soldiers wanted him executed because, well, why not execute the enemy? But Sam Houston, he's smart enough to use him to come to a more peaceful agreement, right? So on May 14th, 1836, the Treaties of Velasco were signed in Velasco, Texas, to officially end the Texas Revolution. Alright, now, you're going to use the notes that you just wrote down to answer question 1 and 2. Identify the 2 people who signed the Treaties of Velasco, and identify the war that the Treaties of Velasco officially ended. So this is a teacher model, so I'm just going to go ahead and show you. Identify equals name it, remember. 2 people who signed the Treaties of Velasco were Santa Anna and Sam Houston. And number 2, this would be your evidence right here. Identify equals name it for number 2. The war that the Treaty of Velasco officially ended. The war of the Treaties of Velasco ended was the Texas Revolution. This would be your evidence here. Please make sure you're writing in complete sentences and circling and labeling your answers using the notes above. Please do so now. Great. So, 2 treaties. There are actually 2 treaties, a public treaty and a private treaty. Now, the public treaty was known to everyone and was published immediately after it was signed. For example, Instagram. Some of you guys have a public Instagram where everyone can see it. My teacher Instagram is a public Instagram. However, a private treaty was kept secret and only top government officials knew that existed. This would be kind of like a Finsta. Now, I don't have a Finsta. I have my regular personal Instagram account that I keep private, but only those who I follow get to know what's on there. So the same way, only those who knew, the top government officials, only knew about the private treaty. Everyone knew about the public treaty. So the idea of both treaties was that the private treaty would go into effect if, and only if, both Mexico and Texas had fulfilled or completed the terms they agreed on in the public treaty. So going back to Mr. Ball's conditional statement lesson that I've sat down in multiple times, if the public treaty passed, then the private treaty would go into effect. Got it? I know this is a very text-heavy lesson. Please bear with me. I'm trying to make this as interesting as possible. All right, now number 3. This is where you, the students, have to do the work. So number 3, describe. Describe equals identify plus 2 details. That's all I'm going to give you. Please describe the differences between the 2 treaties. Please pause now for 5 minutes to answer the question, starting now. Are you paused? I don't think you're paused. All right, let's go on. So the differences between the 2 treaties were that one treaty is public and one is private. That would be your identify piece, which is here. The public one was known to everyone, but the private treaty was only known to top government officials. So this would be your first, this one would be your first detail, and this one would be your second detail. So please make sure you have those 3 things circled or labeled, any way you want. And please make sure you're writing the answer in a complete sentence. Please pause now to make sure you have it written down. Great. So let's go ahead and compare the public treaty. Let's go ahead and compare the public treaty and a private treaty. So, for the public treaty, all fighting between Mexican and Texans would end. All Mexican soldiers would retreat south of the Rio Grande. Santa Ana would be released and allowed to return to Mexico immediately. Now, the private treaty. Santa Ana would not go back to Texas. Would not go back to war with Texas. Santa Ana would try to persuade other members of the Mexican government to recognize Texas independence. And the Rio Grande would be the official border between the countries of Texas and Mexico. Now, number 4. What was so important about the Rio Grande in the Treaties of Velasco? And number 5. Label the Rio Grande. Go ahead and take 2-3 minutes to answer these questions, starting now. All right, let's do this. So number 4. The Rio Grande was important for the Treaties of Velasco because Mexican troops had to retreat south of it, and Texans wanted it as the new border. And number 5, label the Rio Grande. This map isn't great, but it shows both countries as is. I would want you guys to just label it Rio Grande. Try to trace the border between Mexico and Texas and label it as Rio Grande. For those of y'all who are following along with a loose leaf piece of paper, you can just skip. Make sure you memorize where the Rio Grande River is. So the feelings about treaties. So how did Mexico and Texas feel both about the treaties? So both Texans and Mexico violated the terms of the Treaties of Velasco. Even though they promised to return him immediately, the Texans kept Santa Ana in prison for several more months, eventually sending him to the United States for a political meeting. Nothing to do with the treaties at all. The Mexican government did not recognize the Rio Grande as the border between Mexico and Texas. They were being stubborn. And from the Texan perspective, Texas had won the Texas Revolution and was now an independent country. But the Mexicans, they were forced into signing the Treaties of Velasco because he was a prisoner. and therefore treaties were invalid, and Texas was still a part of Mexico. So there was just a bunch of arguing, a lot of bickering, a lot of arguing around about stuff that should have been easy to follow. The treaties are supposed to be easy to follow, but none of them follow through. Later on, it gets resolved, but we'll talk about that more later on. So number 6 and number 7, the last 2 questions for this lesson. Identify one way that the Texans violated the Treaties of Velasco. And number 7, describe why Mexico thought the Treaties of Velasco were unfair. Go ahead and pause now. Take 5 minutes to answer these 2 questions. Pause now. Pause now. All right. So identify equals name it, obviously. One way that Texans violated the Treaties of Velasco. Texans violated the Treaty of Velasco by not releasing Santa Anna immediately. And number 7, describe why Mexico thought the Treaties of Velasco were unfair. Describe means identify plus 2 details. Mexicans thought the treaties were unfair because Santa Anna had been forced into signing the Treaties of Velasco because he was a prisoner, and therefore the treaties were invalid, and Texas was still a part of Mexico. So the Mexicans thought because Santa Anna was forced, it wasn't official, right? So that's where the arguments kept going on. It would get resolved later on. We'll talk more about that on our next lesson. Alright, we've come to the end of the lesson. Please make sure you take the exit ticket at the end of this video. Please make sure to review your notes and use the link that I posted on our Teams page. Or if you're on YouTube, go ahead and look down at the description below. As always, see you soon. The next lesson is not the Battle of San Jacinto. I'm not sure what the next lesson is, but I cannot wait to make these videos again for you guys to see my face, and hopefully I get to see your face sometime soon. Please take care, and know that Mr. Salgado misses you and loves you. See you soon. Bye-bye.